Welcome to Cairns, Australia. We've come a great distance for a pilgrimage of sorts. 2 weeks of exploring the wet tropics of Queensland with the hopes of getting a glimpse at some of the wildlife that has fascinated us for a lifetime. And get a little taste of overland travel in the vast expanse that is Australia's northeast coast. For this trip, we wanted to travel in a quintessential Australian rig, so we turned to our friends at Unesco World to borrow one of their expertly built vehicles that was designed for exactly what we planned to do. So how does it feel to drive on that side?
It is trippy. It feels so strange to go in a roundabout the opposite way. It's going to take some getting used to. So far, we haven't crashed the car. We've gone almost a mile.
I think that we're in the clear now.
Yeah. I guess the slow lane is all the way this way, maybe. I hope.
Yeah, we need to be in whatever that lane is. Our senses were immediately on overdrive. The rainforest was so lush, it seemed like it could support life in every crack and crevice. A very far cry from the desert we seem to spend so much of our time in. Australia was hot in a way that we had never experienced. Desperate to cool off, we found one of the few crocodile-free swimming holes in the area.
Chillier than I expected.
Submerged in the cool water, waiting for the last light of day to fade, we heard the beat of massive wings coming from a distance. A chestnut-colored flying fox appeared from around the bend and flew low over us and upstream, looking for its next meal. It is one of the largest bat species in the world, with a wingspan of up to 6 feet. It felt like we had witnessed a dinosaur flyby. The birds of Australia are reason enough to fly halfway around the world. I think that there might be a pun in there. As avid bird nerds, there was someone new to discover around every corner. There seemed to be no limit to to the shape, size, and color of the birds that we came across. Needless to say, we left Australia with a ton of new birds added to our life list. The Wet Tropics of Queensland is a UNESCO World Heritage Site that protects the best living record of the major stages of evolutionary history of the world's land plants. I will let that sink in for a second. Additionally, the wet tropics are home to 30% of Australia's marsupial species, 60% of their bat species, 40% of their bird species, and 60% of their butterfly species. And honestly, the list goes on. It is utterly mind-blowing to think of just how much life and biodiversity can exist in an area that only makes up about 0.2% of Australia's total landmass. Insane. We spent the day exploring the tablelands and its raging waterfalls. At the time of our visit, it was the tail end of the wet season, meaning that we were seeing these waterfalls during peak runoff. Here, every sound, every bird, every animal, everything was new and tugged at our attention. It was inspiring in a way that's still hard to put a finger on. But what I can say is that Mother Nature never ceases to amaze. Standing at over 160 feet off the forest floor, this tangle of life is a 500-year-old strangler fig tree. Taking it all in, it's kind of a hard tree to comprehend. Visually, it's easier to understand when observing the detail and intricacy up close. The Cathedral Fig's canopy covers a space larger than 2 Olympic swimming pools, and its uppermost branches support literal tons of additional plant and animal life. Strangler figs get their name because they germinate in the canopy of other trees where they have an endless supply of the resources needed to grow. As the fig tree matures, the roots grow down from the canopy and around the host tree, slowly strangling it by cutting off its water and nutrient supply. It's hard to know exactly what played host to the cathedral tree, because it's long since been strangled out of existence. A brutal start for a very magnificent tree. At camp that night, we were approached by a kind local couple. Initially, they were interested in our rig. I don't blame them. But we quickly fell into a comfortable conversation. As we do with all locals we happened to be having a conversation with, we eventually asked if they had any suggestions for places that we should explore. Immediately, they both started singing the praises of a remote town in the outback.
What?
One of them just like came and just hit me.
A broccoli?
Yeah, something.
Initially, our plan was to save the outback for another trip entirely, in favor of focusing all of our efforts on the rainforest. But we also know a really good suggestion when we hear one. As we crawled into the rooftop tent that night, we hatched the plan to head in the opposite direction.